Hi, it's Katrina. Scottish Ghost Village. Brew, a former farming town in Scotland's Shetland Islands, located just south of the Arctic Circle, experienced extreme weather, including bone-chilling temperatures and harsh winds. Oddly, however, the settlement ultimately succumbed to sandstorms that began pummeling the island around 1665. While windswept sand from the shore was nothing unusual, these storms occurred on a magnitude unlike anything the townspeople had ever seen before, destroying their homes and crops and giving them no other choice than to flee. Scientists have long wondered why Brew suffered so severely while nearby towns experienced far less damage. One reason the sandstorms were uncharacteristically unforgiving was timing, as a mini ice age permeated the globe during the 16th and 17th centuries. But that still doesn't explain why Brew bore the brunt of Mother Nature's misgivings. Using a technique called optically stimulated luminescence, which detects the last time sediments were exposed to light, historian and archaeologist Gerald Bigelow of Bates College in Lewiston, Maine, led a team in excavating and studying the site. They identified evidence of much worse than usual sandstorms hitting Brew in the mid-16th and late 17th centuries. The evidence aligns with weather reports from the era detailing unusually harsh wind conditions, while a computer simulation suggests the wind speeds decreased significantly right around Brew, causing the immense sand deposits that ravaged the town. But geography, timing, and weather don't fully explain the situation, according to Bigelow, who speculated that the introduction of a grass-eating rabbit population, along with sheep grazing near the coast, perhaps helped to destabilize Brew's sand dunes. Additionally, Bigelow cites the events that wrecked Brew as a sign that modern climatologists should consider the potential effects of climate change and how they may differ even between places that are very close to one another. While much of the explanation behind Brew's destruction is based on theory, some researchers have admitted that it seems credible. What's your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. Pyramid-shaped Chinese burial. In March 2017, archaeologists discovered a mysterious pyramid-shaped tomb beneath a construction site in Chengdu, the capital city of China's Henan province. Based on an initial analysis, experts surmise that the tomb likely dates back to the Han Dynasty, otherwise known as China's Golden Age, which lasted from 202 BC to 220 AD. The strange structure, nicknamed the Pyramid of Chengdu, is just 6 feet tall, and researchers are unsure who is buried there and why it was made in this shape. The pyramid is one of 2 found inside a coffin chamber, with the other one in the shape of a half-cylinder. The chamber is 98 feet long and 26 feet wide, with a little aisle leading to them. Locals were just as baffled, yet fascinated by the discovery, with one resident describing it as truly magical, adding, "I've never seen anything like it." During the suspected era of the tomb's origins, around 2,000 years ago, China experienced a booming economy, which included the introduction of the Silk Road, a series of ancient lucrative trade routes connecting the East and West. There are other circular-shaped tombs with pointed roofs that have also been found in the region. What do you think about these pyramid tombs? Let me know in the comments. Royal Stone Head. In August 2019, archaeologists digging at Shaftesbury Abbey in Dorset, England, discovered a 14th century stone head that, in the words of expert Dr. Julian Richards, raises a lot more questions than it answers. Richards led the excavation that uncovered the artifact, which was found with a rosary bead. The gender and identity of the head is unknown, although it depicts a royal, perhaps the monarch Edward II, according to an examination performed by Dr. Jonathan Foyle, director of Build Heritage Limited. It dates back to the 1340s and boasts a similar hairstyle to other known images and carvings of Edward II of the time. Hairstyles can also be quite generic, Richards admitted. It could be a queen rather than a king, or a general royal figure to emphasize Shaftesbury's royal connections. King Alfred the Great founded Shaftesbury Abbey in 888 as the first religious house for women, and was dissolved in 1539 by the famous, or infamous, Henry VIII, depending on how you view him. The building was completely ruined by 1550, with much of its stone being repurposed for other constructions. Archaeologists were nearing the end of their work at the site when they found the stone head, which is unlike any other artifacts collected there. Both the head and the rosary bead will be on display when the Shaftesbury Abbey Museum and Gardens, which are closed due to the ongoing global coronavirus pandemic, reopen in spring of 2021. Strange mythical bathroom tile beast. While excavating the basement at the Courtauld Institute of Art in late 2019, archaeologists with the Museum of London Archaeology, or MOLA, discovered a 14th century cesspit that was paradoxically filled with priceless artifacts. A cesspit and artifacts? That should not go together. Included among the treasures were a gold-plated ring, an iron horse-riding spur, and a double-pronged post-medieval fork. The most intriguing among the artifacts was, in the words of MOLA senior archaeologist Antonietta Lertz, who spoke with Life Science, a strange mythical creature with a human head at one end and a leaf-like tail at the other. Measuring roughly 15 by 15 feet and at a depth of over 13 feet, the chalk-lined cesspit was used for storing human waste for at least a century. It once sat beneath Chester Inn, the Bishop of Chester's London home. While this might sound gross, these places are amazing for archaeologists because you can learn so much about a culture from their waste. The chamber was converted into a cellar by the 17th century. Subsequent changes were added, with the last addition to the space being a small 19th century latrine. The valuable artifacts that were found in the pit were presumably thrown away or left there over the years. But archaeologists lack an explanation for the floor tile bearing the strange beast, which dates back to sometime between 1350 and 1390. They identified it as a Penn tile, manufactured in the Buckinghamshire village of Penn. But how an item that was normally used in monasteries ended up in a cesspit remains a mystery. Three Whale Rock. Hin Sam Wan, or Three Whale Rock, is a 75-million-year-old rock formation in northeastern Thailand that, when you look at it from the sky, looks like you're looking at a family of whales swimming through the forest. At the right angle, it looks like they are jutting out right over a cliff or mountaintop that also looks like a wave. They are situated on a remote mountainside in a nationally protected reserve containing the Kala Rainforest, Phu Sing Forest, and Pink Dong Forest. The landmark, characterized by a series of 3 rocks that stick out from the landscape, is reachable via a lengthy trail network that offers 9 different routes to the top. Once you get there, you can access breathtaking views, including the Mekong beaches, the mountains of the Pakading district in neighboring Laos, and Phu Vua Forest. The unusually long, smooth shapes of the 3 whale rock formations have understandably drawn widespread attention regarding their origins, because they look very unnatural. People wonder if they were perhaps smoothed out by humans, or if they are natural, how did they form in this shape? Most scientists agree that the structures formed naturally, acquiring their current shape as a result of millions of years' worth of exposure to the elements. The rock is sandstone, which weathers quite slowly and looks kind of similar to those found in the southwest desert of the United States. They may have been carved by the wind, but these formations are in the jungle and not in the dry desert, which is much easier to carve. But some people wonder why the formations at Three Whale Rock are the only examples of such bizarrely shaped rocks in the area. What happened here? What do you think? Did this strange site form naturally, or do you think we're missing something? Let me know in the comments below. A brutal end. A recently published study depicts what experts believe was the first case of intentional facial mutilation in Anglo-Saxon England. A young woman's nose was removed, most likely as a punishment. The findings are based on the 1,100-year-old skull of a young woman whose nose and upper lip appear to be deliberately removed and who may have also been scalped. Her injuries are consistent with historical records detailing punishments of female criminal offenders, but the age of her skull predates these written accounts by about a century. We can only speculate as to what happened in this instance, but the highly formalized nature of the woman's injuries suggests penalties for specific actions, such as sexual deviancy, or at least a perception of such, lead researcher Gerard Cole told Life Science. The discovery of the skull itself is nothing new. It was found during the 1960s amid routine excavations prior to the construction of a housing development. Yikes, glad I didn't find it. Then it was placed into a collection that sat in storage until it was rediscovered relatively recently. The skull was paid such little attention after its initial discovery, in fact, that it was still covered in soil when scientists revisited it. Based on the new findings, the victim was likely between 15 and 18 years old when she died, sometime between 776 and 899 AD. An isotope analysis of her teeth suggests that she was from outside the area. As far as her injuries go, both wounds seem to have been made by a sharp, thin-bladed weapon, Cole explained, most likely an iron knife. There is no evidence of the teenager's wounds healing, indicating that she died while receiving the barbaric punishment. Quite a horrible way to go. How the young woman died is far less of a mystery than why. When it comes to whatever she supposedly did wrong, unless written documentation is found, we probably won't ever find out. Mummified Penguin Cemetery. A team of biologists led by researcher Stephen Emsley from the University of North Carolina recently discovered a large collection of mummified penguins in Cape Irizar. While this might not sound that strange, this is a part of Antarctica that penguins are not known to frequent in the first place. Based on radiocarbon dating, the remains range from a few hundred years old to anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 years old. While many of the remains appeared fresh, breeding penguins have not been recorded at the site since ancient times, according to Dr. Emsley. The team recently published their findings in the journal Geology, explaining in the study that even Adelaide penguins, the southernmost breeding penguin species, have no known active presence in Cape Irizar. Emsley and his colleagues are at a loss to explain the number of dead penguins there. Overall, our sampling recovered a mixture of old and what appeared to be recent penguin remains, implying multiple periods of occupation and abandonment of this cape over thousands of years, said Emsley. Climate change apparently revealed the penguins, which had remained buried under snow and ice for around 800 years since the Little Ice Age. Melting led to their discovery and also led the researchers to realize that this may also be why penguin colonies stopped visiting the island. As temperatures warm, however, this could change. Our only option is to wait and see. Unusually placed corpses. Almazán, a town in Soria in Spain, is seemingly inconsequential in today's world, with its small population of just 5,500 residents. But during medieval times, it was a powerful political hub that important historical figures passed through, and it was the perfect meeting point for strategizing invasions into Muslim territory. A newly published study called Almazán, its necropolis and medieval walls, details the grisly discovery of 22 human corpses throughout Almazán, 11 of which were buried beneath the town's stone wall. Researchers believe that the wall, which is surrounded by a moat, was built in 1128. They also speculate that there may be more bodies at the site, waiting to be discovered. Unfortunately, their knowledge is severely limited by a stone that went missing after it was removed from the wall in the late 19th century. The stone contained an inscription, which modern researchers believe may be the key to identifying which king commissioned the wall's construction. According to records, the message mentioned a king named Alfonso, but the stone mysteriously vanished after the Royal Academy of History took possession of it in 1896. The institution confirmed that it no longer has the stone and has no idea where it is. To further complicate matters, more than one Alfonso ruled over the region over the years. The study attempts to tackle another of Almazán's mysteries, namely the strange placement of the bodies found there. They formulated 3 possible scenarios, the most likely one proposing that the burials were in place before the wall's construction and did not stop the builders from building it anyway. Whether the graves belonged to Christians, Jews, or Muslims is another unanswered question, as they all contain traces of wood, which was customarily used in burials of all 3 faiths. It seems as though scientists may never fully uncover the town's history without the missing stone, which hopefully turns up. The Chaco culture. The architectural remains of the Chacoans, ancestors of the Puebloans, are found in northwestern New Mexico in the form of a vast building complex known as Chaco. Dating back between 850 and 1250 AD, the structures were once home to as many as 5,000 people who thrived in the arid, extreme climate, which sees scorching hot summers and frigid winters. There are over 400 archaeological sites at Chaco, including Pueblo Bonito, a 2-acre site containing an 800-room building that once housed an estimated 2,000 people and was equipped with sophisticated irrigation systems. The 1,000-year-old ruins boast other sophisticated features of their time, including roads. By all appearances, Chaco appears to have been a trading hub, but it also may have had ceremonial and political purposes. Researchers aren't quite sure, although some modern tribes in New Mexico consider the site sacred and occasionally hold ceremonies there. The multi-storied buildings at Chaco are oriented in solar, lunar, and cardinal directions, reflecting the civilization's advanced knowledge. Chaco was mysteriously abandoned during the 13th century, and experts are still trying to understand why. The prevailing theory suggests that methods necessary for building the site, namely deforestation and poor land use, played a perpetuating role in Chaco's collapse. Researchers recently called this theory into question in a study that was recently published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. In the new findings, scientists from the University of New Mexico claim that there is no solid evidence to back the theory that unsustainable land use or the over-allocation of resources contributed to Chaco's abandonment. While the study rejects popular notions revolving around the settlement's end, it fails to come up with an alternative explanation, leaving the world with no choice but to wonder what happened to Chaco. Ubaid culture. Although Sumeria has long been considered the earliest known civilization, it may have even been predated by the Ubaidian culture. Like the Sumerians and the Teotihuacanos in Mexico, their origins are unknown. They lived in ancient Mesopotamia and dated back to 5,500 to 4,000 BC. This early society is credited with building the first unwalled village settlements, as well as open courtyards, paved streets, and the first temples of public architecture in Mesopotamia. They had developed architectural and agricultural techniques with irrigation. In 1919, at the Tel Ubaid archaeological site in modern-day Iraq, historian Harry Reginald Hall and his team discovered a series of pre-Sumerian male and female lizard-like figurines. Similar statues were also found in and Eridu. They're depicted in various positions and look like they are wearing a helmet and shoulder padding. Some of the figurines were of female lizards with humanoid features nursing their reptilian babies. Archaeologists are unsure what these 7,000-year-old statues were used for or what they are supposed to represent. It looks like perhaps the Ubaid people worshipped a reptilian god. These types of statues are found often in other areas of Mesopotamia, dating back to the same time. Serpents and lizards were symbolic in many ancient societies, so it is not so difficult to believe that these mysterious statues may have somehow played a part of ancient people's lives. We're just not sure what it was yet. Lost Kingdom of Ancient Turkey. A farmer in southern Turkey made a fascinating discovery in 2019 when he stumbled upon a large, partially submerged stone or stele containing mysterious inscriptions in an irrigation canal. Several months later, the man notified local archaeologists who noticed that the stone's hieroglyphs are Luwian, an Indo-European language native to Turkey, and which was common in the area during the Bronze and Iron Ages. The stele told the story of an ancient civilization that may have defeated Phrygia, a kingdom ruled by King Midas during the late 8th century BC. Remember, King Midas is famous in mythology for turning whatever he touched into gold. Archaeologists said they had no idea about this kingdom. The stone's inscriptions indicate that its message came directly from the lost civilization's ruler, King Hartapu. The society was likely one of the largest settlements in ancient Turkey throughout its existence, which researchers believe lasted from the 9th to the 7th centuries BC and spanned a roughly 300-acre area at its peak. Archaeologists don't know the civilization's name, but are actively working to learn what they can about it by excavating its suspected capital at an archaeological site called Turkmen Çatalhöyük. King Hartapu has been mentioned in at least one other inscription, but the details about who he was and his significance are vague. It's always exciting when we discover a lost kingdom, don't you think? Pre-Columbian Puerto Rican society. During the 1800s, a Puerto Rican monk named José María Nazario announced his discovery of 800 carved stone statuettes at an undisclosed location. According to his narrative, a dying old woman had summoned him to her home and revealed the site of ancient treasure her family had been protecting for centuries. Naturally, Nazario's strange story was controversial, with many chalking it up to a tall tale or a forgery, while others admitted that the statuettes might be genuine, but their discoverer's account of finding them perhaps didn't add up. Nazario, who was a religious man, claimed that the statues were made by members of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, who he believed traveled to Puerto Rico by first crossing through Siberia. That's kind of far, right? Known as the Nazario collection, the artifacts contain images of different shapes, some resembling humanoid figures, while other markings remain unidentified, with some seemingly representing an ancient, unknown writing system. To this day, the authenticity of the pieces remains in question. While radiocarbon dating originally dated the statuettes to sometime between 900 BC and 900 AD, and an analysis of their material showed that it was locally sourced, the language reflected in their carvings is a mystery. Researchers can do little else but speculate about the origins of the statuettes, with some experts theorizing that they were created by a lost civilization. Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are a series of deities worshipped by the ancient Sumerians and later the Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. These ancient civilizations, located mostly in Mesopotamia, are known as the cradle of civilization. The Sumerians are most famous for their contributions to humanity, including cuneiform writing, governance, architecture, and they are considered the creators of our civilization as we know it. Established around 4,500 years ago, they consisted of several city-states, including Ur and Uruk, with a population of up to 80,000 people. The famous Epic of Gilgamesh comes from the Sumerians. They worshipped the Anunnaki, who were the children of the sky god and the earth goddess. But now some people consider that the Anunnaki were not actually mythological, but a real group of people on Earth who posed as gods. Authors Michael Cremo and Eric von Daniken pointed toward the Anunnaki to support the far-flung theory that ancient astronauts visited Earth during prehistoric times. In Daniken's opinion, religious figures detailed in Sumerian texts and the Old Testament contain signs of an alien race making contact with ancient humans. Russian-American author Zechariah Sitchin claimed in his 1976 book, The 12th Planet, that the Anunnaki were an advanced humanoid alien race from Nibiru, a yet undiscovered planet, and that they visited Earth 500,000 years ago to mine gold. Sitchin also asserted that this extraterrestrial society intermingled with Homo erectus, a predecessor to modern humans, resulting in hybrid offspring. Some even go as far as to say the Anunnaki sky gods may have even created the human species to be a slave race to do their bidding, mostly to mine gold. The Anunnaki left Earth when the Antarctic glacier melted, resulting in the Great Flood, only to return and teach agriculture to humankind. Additionally, Sitchin credited the Anunnaki with building the Great Pyramids and various other monumental structures. This is the beginning of the ancient astronaut hypothesis, which says that alien beings have influenced human affairs. Proponents of this theory argue that the Anunnaki, or similar, brought advanced technology to humanity and explains all of the out-of-place artifacts that have been found by mainstream science that haven't yet been explained. Our knowledge of astronomy and mathematics is said to be given to us by the Anunnaki. Some even go as far as to say that they are still around, influencing politics and corporations, like the Illuminati. Not surprisingly, historians, archaeologists, mathematicians, astronomers, and more discredit these claims, accusing these people of twisting ancient Sumerian writings to their favor by conveniently mistranslating words, shortening quotes, and quoting them out of context. Ancient Aliens on the History Channel has also helped to make this theory much more mainstream. While there is a lot we don't know yet about human evolution, scientists say that it's important to give these ancient societies credit for what they did, and that the Anunnaki are part of a mythological and spiritual pantheon, no more real than the Greek gods and goddesses that we might be more familiar with. What do you think? Were the Anunnaki any more than what historians say? A collection of deities worshipped by a handful of ancient civilizations? Or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'd love to have you. Khwarezm Shah Dynasty. In the dry desert of northern Uzbekistan, there are mysterious desert towers left behind by a lost civilization. The archaeological site of Ayas Kala is home to 3 kalas, or mountain fortresses, which constitute some of the last known remnants of the Khwarezm Shah Dynasty, a lost civilization that existed from the 4th century BC until the 7th century AD. Khwarezm Shah flourished for roughly 1,000 years before it was ultimately abandoned. The 3 fortresses built at Ayas Kala near the Amu Darya River and at the edge of the Kizilkum Desert represent the most remote and rugged of the civilization's structures, and each one is unique. There is no evidence of permanent dwellings at the site of Fortress Number 1, leading some experts to believe that it housed military members in temporary dwellings such as tents or reed huts. It sits above Ayas Kala II, a feudal fortress dating back to the 6th to 8th centuries, and Ayas Kala III, a fortified garrison from the 1st and 2nd centuries. Little is known about the mysterious civilization that built the fortresses, which were abandoned during the 7th century and possibly briefly inhabited again during the 13th century. 1,200 years passed by before they were rediscovered by Soviet archaeologists, and now they look like they are melting, battered by the winds and snow in winter and flooding and dry heat in the summer. Unknown rock art creators. Northern Israel and the surrounding region are scattered with thousands of ancient tombs called dolmens. Erected between 4,000 and 5,000 years ago during the Intermediate Bronze Era, the structures represent a yet unidentified civilization, who researchers have had little luck learning more about. Experts caught a lucky break when in 2018, a ranger working in the Yehudia Nature Reserve noticed cave carvings while going about her day. She contacted the Israeli Antiquities Authority, and archaeologists who reported to the site quickly identified the carvings as genuine rock art. The zoomorphic images depict 3 westward-facing horned animals and 3 eastward-facing ones, along with 2 that are facing each other, likely a male and a female. In 2012, researcher Gonan Sharon happened upon a field containing around 400 dolmens. While looking up at the domed roof of the largest monument, Sharon noticed unnatural, weird shapes, which turned out to be man-made carvings of tridents. Known as the Shamir carvings, the artwork revived archaeological interest in the area's dolmens, sparking increased discoveries in recent years. We know very little of the actual culture of the people who built them, Sharon told the news media, explaining that bits and pieces of ceramics, jewelry, spearheads, and other items have been found, but it's very rare to find artifacts, let alone anything major or telling of the dolmen's creators. The cave art discoveries have certainly furthered experts' knowledge, but they also pose new questions about the ancient culture, whose identity remains elusive. Why those animals, wondered IAA archaeologist Yuri Berger. Why in these dolmens but not others? What made this one special? Scientists are hoping to learn more about this mysterious culture. Tel Moza. In July 2019, highway construction workers in Israel uncovered evidence of a city that existed in a sort of transitional state between hunter-gatherer culture and agricultural invention. The site, Tel Moza, sits northwest of ancient Jerusalem, and it calls into question previous understandings of when humankind first transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to farming and permanent settlements, a time known as the Agricultural Revolution. Archaeologists from the IAA spent a year and a half excavating the site, which turned out to be a huge Stone Age settlement roughly 1/3 of a mile long. At its peak, it was likely a thriving metropolis containing homes with plastered floors and walls, alleyways, an Israelite temple, and more. Figurines of human men were found at Tel Moza, but their significance remains unknown. The evidence suggests that humans may have lived in the area as far back as 20,000 years ago, but for now, the settlement is considered around 9,000 years old, dating back to the pre-pottery Neolithic period. Findings show that humans occupied Tel Moza as early as the 8th or 7th century BC, and that people were intermittently present at the site up until the 20th century. Based on an abundance of artifacts dating back to the 10th to 6th centuries BC, during the Iron Age, archaeologists have confirmed Tel Moza as the biblical site of Moza, which was first mentioned in the book of Joshua. As much as experts know about Tel Moza, the people who inhabited the city remain somewhat of a mystery. What they left behind offers an extremely rare glimpse into the religious practices and rituals of the time, but the details of their everyday lives and customs are less clear. Çatalhöyük. Located in what is now southern Anatolia, Turkey, the Neolithic settlement at Çatalhöyük existed from around 7,100 BC to 5,700 BC. Composed of prehistoric mound settlements, the proto-city reached its peak around 7,000 BC and was ultimately abandoned before the Bronze Age. A team led by archaeologist James Mellart excavated Çatalhöyük starting in 1958 and learned that the people who lived there were part of an advanced culture and that their city represented its center. The settlement was long-lasting, as evidenced by the 18 layers of buildings that were found there. Most of the structures appear to be domestic in nature, with no outwardly identifiable public facilities being present at the site, although the purposes of some of the rooms and buildings are unknown. People lived in mud brick houses that were combined in a honeycomb-like maze to form a single structure. The building was equipped with ladders, stairs, and holes, which made the dwellings accessible. Residents kept their homes immaculately clean, leaving behind little debris. The settlement is dotted with murals, figurines, and human burials, but a temple is conspicuously lacking. Based on its architecture, it's believed that the average population at Çatalhöyük numbered between 5,000 and 7,000 residents, and at its peak, as many as 10,000 people lived there. Researchers also think that the population fluctuated over time. But they only know so much about the people who lived there based primarily on the clues that the site offers. For one, the society appears to have been egalitarian in nature, meaning that most people were equal, very rare during this time period, and it lacked a clear distinction between social strata. Plus, all clues point toward the society's religion being based on a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. But that's about all experts know thus far, and given the age of Çatalhöyük's ruins, it's very hard to learn more. Guanche natives. In February of this year, amateur archaeologists discovered the remains of mummies on the island of Gran Canaria, part of Spain's Canary Islands. Using a drone, they were able to locate 62 adults and 10 newborns in the Guayadeque ravine, in a difficult-to-access spot situated roughly 75 feet down a series of cliffs. Concerned the site was at risk of being vandalized, the discoverers informed archaeologists, who confirmed the discovery, estimating that the cave the remains were found in dates back to sometime between the 8th and 10th centuries. The mummies belonged to members of the Guanche people, an aboriginal group that inhabited the Canary Islands. Burial shrouds made from animal skins and vegetable fibers were also found at the site. The Guanches, who likely migrated to the archipelago around 1000 BC, were ethnically and culturally absorbed by Spanish settlers who arrived between 1402 and 1496. While there are around 1,200 known archaeological sites on Gran Canaria, this one is unique, particularly due to the presence of such young remains. Aside from this, the discovery confirms that all the indigenous people that once inhabited the island were buried in the same manner. But where did the Guanche people, the original inhabitants of the Canary Islands, come from? DNA evidence recently proved that they migrated there from North America, and evidence suggests that they lived a hunter-gatherer lifestyle characteristic of the Stone Age. But by and large, the Guanche are more mysterious than anything to modern researchers, who believe that they lived in caves and huts and made do with very few tools. They likely possessed knowledge of basic pottery and farming, and it's suspected that they built numerous pyramids found throughout Tenerife, although this has not yet been proven. Extraterrestrial visitors? The ancient astronaut theory suggests that extraterrestrials visited the prehistoric world and helped early humans learn advanced engineering, architectural, and agricultural skills. This belief comes in various forms. Like I mentioned before, Swiss author Erich von Däniken championed this theory throughout the 1960s and 70s with his best-selling book, Chariots of the Gods, and numerous sequels. He claimed that numerous archaeological sites and artifacts, including Stonehenge, Pumapunku, the Moai monoliths of Easter Island, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the Baghdad Battery, were all made with more sophisticated technology than what was available at the time, indicating that they were created by aliens from outer space. Maybe not the Anunnaki, but some form of civilization that was very advanced and that science just can't explain. Von Däniken believed that certain ancient art depicted air and spacecrafts, intelligent non-human beings, ancient astronauts, and abnormally advanced technology. While he is not considered an archaeological expert by the academic community, in his opinion, he asserted that geographically separated societies shared common themes in their artwork, pointing towards shared extraterrestrial origins. Von Däniken's claims don't stand up to experts who accuse him of misrepresenting data, making unfounded claims, and making unproven claims. They also believe that he influences the beliefs of his followers, who know nothing about how to look at artifacts and take whatever he says at face value because it's more fun than the truth. His books are more science fiction and entertaining than anything else. I mean, you have to admit that the idea of aliens coming and helping the ancient Egyptians build pyramids is pretty fun. But why didn't they give ancient people electricity as well while they were at it? Or the ability to travel? Or advanced medical knowledge? In fact, von Däniken himself admitted that the Nazca lines, which he insisted were made by aliens, could have human roots. And unlike many of us, there are people out there who dedicate their lives to learning more about these mysterious places and civilizations who made them to ensure that their contributions to humanity are not lost to time. The Congo's last dinosaur. Since the early 16th century, rumors have circulated that there is a strange prehistoric creature living in the Congo Basin. Locals call it the Mokele Mbebe, and it is a mysterious beast that most people believe to be myth. It's described as a water beast about the size of an elephant, with a very long neck and long tail that lurks deep in the swamp. The description of the creature is a lot like that of a sauropod dinosaur, and in the 20th century, the legend captured the imagination of the entire world. The widespread notion that there is a dinosaur or a dinosaur-like reptile lurking somewhere in Africa was perpetuated by Carl Hagenbeck, an animal dealer and showman, who wrote a book on the topic in 1909. Bernard Heuvelmans, the father of cryptozoology, further promoted the concept starting in the 1950s. The idea persists into the present day as evidenced by alleged sightings of the Mokele Mbebe, including video footage that has widely circulated the internet in recent years that allegedly shows baby dinosaurs scampering across a road. Other so-called proof has surfaced, including other videos, images, audio recordings, and alleged footprint casts, but the creature's existence has yet to be truly proven by science. Zambia also is rumored to be home to a sauropod-like beast, and the idea of a dinosaur still hiding in unexplored regions comes from mostly European foreigners who traveled there and had to deal with unknown monsters. No reliable sightings or evidence has turned up, even though scientists have conducted over a dozen failed expeditions to find it. In 1980 and 1981, monster hunter and retired University of Chicago biologist Roy McCall led an expedition to where the story seems to have originated and got more stories and legends directly from the locals, but no sight of the dinosaur. Do you think that there may be dinosaurs in the Congo or anywhere else lurking about? Let me know in the comments below. Desert rat kangaroo. Europeans first glimpsed the desert rat kangaroo during the 19th century. Known as the ulakunta to the Aboriginal people of Australia, the small creature was about the size of a rabbit, weighed less than a guinea pig, and was extraordinarily fast. English naturalist John Gould formally described the desert rat kangaroo in 1843, and it seemed to have vanished after that. The animal was presumed to be extinct and wasn't seen again until nearly a century later in 1932, when 4 Aboriginal men helped mammal expert Hedley Herbert Finlayson track one down. Since then, there have been no confirmed sightings of the desert rat kangaroo, and it's once again considered extinct due to the length of time that has passed since it last appeared. Experts have searched extensively to see if it's still around and have even found some clues suggesting that it could be. But the chances of this being the case are close to zero, according to mammal expert Dr. Diana Fisher. Based on a statistical model that factors how often the desert rat kangaroo has been sighted and how long it's been since it was last seen, researchers have estimated the possibility that it still exists at 1%. But 1% is still higher than 0, meaning they haven't completely ruled out the idea that the creature still has a scarce presence. But experts certainly do not have high hopes. They believe that invasive red foxes killed it off and think it's highly unlikely anyone will ever see one again. Malabar civet. A small dog-like carnivore called the Malabar civet was thought to have gone extinct in 1929, with hunting and habitat loss in the creature's native region, the Western Ghats of India, presumably to blame. But one was actually spotted in 1987 on a cashew plantation in Kerala, proving that the species was still hanging in there, by a thread at best, but it still counts. I'm sad to say that the villagers killed the lone civet, and in 1990, 2 of the animal's skins were procured. It's thought to still exist hidden away based on interviews with locals, who said that the few civets left were known to frequent protected areas. The species is classified as critically endangered. Some posts on social media during the recent lockdown claim to have seen the Malabar civet, but it was most likely a small Indian civet. The lack of human activity allowed many animals to come out from where they were hiding, and there were rumors that even leopards were roaming the streets. Because these creatures are so elusive, on top of being rare to begin with, it's difficult for experts to learn about them, and camera traps routinely fail to capture footage of any surviving specimens that might still be out there. So in any case, it is still very hard to say. Montane monkey-faced bat. Endemic to the Solomon Islands, the Montane monkey-faced bat was described as a new species in 1991, after it was last seen the year before on Guadalcanal Island. That solitary bat was the only one ever encountered, leaving experts little to learn from when it comes to understanding the creature's biology. The Montane monkey-faced bat hails from a very rare genus of bats, commonly called megabats, or fruit bats, and evolved in isolation, making it even more genetically unique. Although nobody has officially seen one in 30 years, it is not considered extinct yet. The species is listed as critically endangered and possibly extinct, but are there any left out there? Experts seem to be holding out slight hope for now. They believe that any existing Montane monkey-faced bat populations dwell at altitudes of over 3,900 feet above sea level. The creatures have only been documented in environments at this elevation, and only on Guadalcanal Island. So if there are any left, they are probably restricted to this very small area. Ethiopian lion. Most African lions live in the savanna of sub-Saharan Africa, with very few appearing elsewhere. Because of how little they've been studied, it's unclear whether those populations elsewhere are genetically distinct subspecies. Ethiopian lions, known for their conspicuously dark manes, were thought to be extinct until 2016, when a population of about 50 were confirmed. Nearby, across the border in Sudan, is another small group numbering around 100. In 2017, a research team, including an ornithologist and a conservation biologist, captured one of these elusive black-maned Ethiopian lions on camera. They drove 3 days to get to the remote region in which they spotted the creature, a place called the Alatash National Park, which no tourists have ever visited. With the amount of damage humans are known to cause to endangered species, the lions are probably better off being so far away from us, and this distance likely increases their chances of being brought back from the brink of extinction. Gilbert's potoroo. The small creature known as Gilbert's potoroo, or Thengel cat, is Australia's most endangered marsupial, as well as one of the world's most fungi-dependent mammals. It was discovered in 1840 and vanished just 40 years later, leading experts to believe it went extinct. This remained the case for quite some time, for around a century to be precise. Researchers eventually resolved that the Gilbert's potoroo was long gone, perhaps due to European colonization of Australia. Then, in December 1994, a researcher named Liz Sinclair rediscovered the species in Western Australia on the slopes of Mount Gardner while studying wallabies, and then she unexpectedly caught a specimen in a trap. Today, this is the only known wild population. It's thought to number less than 100, with some estimating the remaining specimens at around 70. Gilbert's potoroos exist only in southwestern Australia, over a small area spanning 2,471 acres at most, within the Two Peoples Bay Nature Reserve. To spare the species from extinction, conservationists are working to establish populations at Bald Island and Michaelmas Island, but for now, scientists hesitate to get high hopes about the future of the Gilbert's potoroo, which hangs by a thread to the edge of existence. Horton Plains slender loris. Researchers discovered the Horton Plains slender loris in 1937. Endemic to Sri Lanka, the creature was already so rare by then that it wasn't seen again for another 60 years. Conservationists gained hope that the loris was still out there in 2002, when a creature resembling it briefly appeared during the night. The Zoological Society of London conducted further investigations and concluded in 2009 that the Horton Plains slender loris is in fact still around, albeit in extremely limited numbers. Researchers managed to photograph 2 of the creatures and estimated the species population at 100 or less, possibly making it the world's rarest primate, according to National Geographic. The animal is mostly threatened by habitat loss resulting from cutting down trees for firewood, and because it only dwells in a small portion of Sri Lanka, it is constantly in ever-increasing danger of extinction. For now, the goal is to save however many are left by protecting and preserving their dwindling environment. Scientists know very little about these elusive tree dwellers, which until recently were considered a subspecies of the red slender loris. Now, based on photographs captured in 2009, experts believe that the Horton Plains slender loris may constitute its own separate species. New Zealand storm petrel. Nicknamed the seabird capital of the world, New Zealand's shores are home to over 100 species of breeding seabirds. Included among them is the New Zealand storm petrel, a small, fast-flying, black and white bird that was thought to be extinct starting in 1850. But in 2003, the species reappeared, after over a century of not a single recorded observation occurring. A group of extremely lucky birdwatchers had the rare opportunity of spotting the bird, and the quick-thinking spectators made sure to snap a photo. The New Zealand storm petrel's existence was doubly confirmed 2 years later, when one landed on a boat belonging to a fisherman and former conservation ranger. Following the bird's rediscovery, conservationists worked for years to determine where it nests. This was a difficult task, considering the species' nocturnal lifestyle and elusive nature, but in 2013, researchers finally found a nesting site. They subsequently captured 400 specimens for the purpose of preserving the New Zealand storm petrel, which they optimistically believe may number in the thousands, although an exact count is unavailable. That's good news, right? Fernandina giant tortoise. The Galapagos Islands were once home to an estimated 300,000 giant tortoises. Today, those numbers are diminishing, and finding certain subspecies, for example, the Fernandina giant tortoise, is becoming increasingly difficult. The Fernandina giant tortoise disappeared over a century ago, with the last known live specimen on the island being confirmed in 1906, leading scientists to conclude that it was likely extinct. In fact, until recent years, the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List officially listed the Fernandina giant tortoise as possibly extinct. But some researchers held out hope that the subspecies was still out there, based on ranger sightings of the creature's feces, and a team spent over a decade planning an expedition to find one. Their efforts proved successful when, in February 2019, they found a female specimen on Fernandina Island. She's estimated to be around 100 years old and is the only known surviving member of her species, although some experts believe more may be out there, based on signs they've noticed around the island. The team took the female to a breeding center in what could turn out to be a last-ditch effort to save the species if they do not find any more survivors. For now, they continue to search Fernandina for other tortoises, while conducting DNA tests on the one they found to confirm that she's an authentic Fernandina tortoise, and in hopes of breeding her and reviving the species. Crested gecko. Native to southern New Caledonia, a French territory in the southern Pacific Ocean, the crested gecko, or the eyelash gecko, was first officially described in 1866. The unique creature can lick its own eyeballs and stick to walls using electromagnetism. It's got all kinds of superpowers. But it disappeared from human observation for nearly 130 years and was not seen again until 1994. Following a tropical storm, a team led by German herpetologist Robert Sipe rediscovered the crested gecko in its native habitat. Researchers collected numerous live specimens following the creature's re-emergence and brought them back to the US and Europe for further analysis. During that time, they bred the creatures in captivity and with surprising success. To avoid further jeopardizing the species' wild population, it is now illegal to export the crested gecko from its natural habitat, where it is threatened primarily by fire ants, whom it competes with for food and is also eaten by. But the crested gecko is now one of the most commonly bred captive lizards, and the ease with which this was accomplished offers hope that the species will survive in its proper environment. Saber-toothed cat. Saber-toothed cats, known for their massive canines, came from the extinct Smilodon genus of big cats. The smallest species among them weighed as much as 220 pounds, while the largest tipped the scales at up to 880 pounds. All these cats have one thing in common, however. They are not thought to have lived past around 10,000 years ago, when the last of them went extinct at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. Every now and then, however, there are claims of someone spotting an extinct saber-toothed cat. Most of these accounts originate in South America, and one is detailed in author Peter Matheson's 1996 book, The Cloud Forest. The text describes the animal as a rare striped cat not quite so large as a jaguar and very timid, which is possessed of two very large protruding teeth. Additionally, the 1975 shooting of a 160-pound so-called mutant jaguar in Paraguay is mentioned in Carl Schuker's Mystery Cats of the World. One of its canine teeth allegedly measured a foot long, according to zoologist Juan Acabar, who reportedly examined the animal. Curiously, the exact location of where the specimen was shot remains undisclosed, and the authorities classified it as a jaguar. Did they do this because it actually was a jaguar, or did they do this because they didn't know what it was and didn't want to alarm the locals? While some people go with the latter theory, most experts will agree that it's not just unlikely, but virtually impossible that someone witnessed a surviving Smilodon specimen after the genus went extinct so many thousands of years ago. Praia dubia. Commonly called the giant siphonophore, the Praia dubia is a deep-sea invertebrate that can be found in waters throughout the world, with a distribution ranging from the North Atlantic to the South Pacific. Found at depths between 2,300 and 3,300 feet, it is a colony of single animals called zooids, each performing a specific function. Zooids have a symbiotic relationship and cannot survive independently of one another. They are all working parts of a whole, with specialized roles such as catching prey, digesting food, reproducing, and swimming. Some even have very long tentacles that can deliver a powerful sting. The giant siphonophore is about as thin as a broomstick, but it's one of the world's longest sea organisms, reaching up to 160 feet long, rivaling even the massive blue whale in some cases. It swims actively but is docile and slow-moving as it uses its bioluminescence, or self-created light, to attract prey, including small crustaceans and gelatinous organisms such as fish larvae and small fish. Captured by ROVs, this long chain of organisms emits a very beautiful glow in the dark waters of the ocean. Giant armadillo. Nicknamed the forest ghost, the giant armadillo is the largest living armadillo species, reaching up to 5 feet from snout to tail and weighing as much as 110 pounds, twice the size of the next biggest armadillo species. It's found throughout South America, but is rarely seen despite its size. Not only are they very hard to find, but they are quiet. Established in 2010, the Giant Armadillo Project aims to expand scientists' knowledge about this very elusive creature that we don't know much about. They say it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It was founded by 2 Brazilian organizations, the Institute for Ecological Research and the Institute for the Conservation of Wild Animals, and the organization has made some remarkable discoveries about the enigmatic giant armadillo in recent years. The species is nocturnal and solitary, spending most of its time within a complex tunnel network that it digs, which at least partially explains why it's so seldom spotted. It's active for around 5 hours at night, covering around 1.2 miles of distance during this time. Thanks to the Giant Armadillo Project, researchers have also learned that pregnancies last for roughly 5 months, and that mothers typically give birth to a single offspring. Giant armadillos are fast, efficient diggers, capable of carving out a vast network of tunnels. Their claws are bigger than those of a polar bear, about 5.5 inches long. Over 70 species were observed making use of the species' home, likely due to the tunnel's consistent temperature in environments that experience significant temperature changes. This discovery proved how little scientists know about the world underneath us, and showed that this obscure species plays a key role in its ecosystem. Chinese giant salamander. Known as a living fossil, the Chinese giant salamander is a member of the Cryptobranchidae family, which dates back some 170 million years. It's one of the world's largest salamanders and amphibians, growing up to 6 feet long and weighing between 55 and 66 pounds on average. This oversized amphibian spends most or all of its time in the waters of China's freshwater river ecosystems, where it absorbs oxygen through its skin because it has no gills. Chinese giant salamanders are known to feed on insects, amphibians, crab, shrimp, fish, and even members of their own species. They are nearly blind, relying primarily on sensory nodes that detect even the slightest vibrations. Once common throughout China, the species is threatened due mainly to overhunting and habitat destruction, despite existing in large numbers in captivity, where it is bred for the exotic pet industry, as well as its use in natural remedies. Moreover, while these salamander farms seem to prevent the Chinese giant salamander from going extinct, they cannot make up for the creature's genetic diversity that occurs in the wild. World's longest insect. Discovered in the rainforests of Borneo, Indonesia by a villager in 1989, the Chan's megastick quickly earned the world record title for the longest insect, with its body measuring up to 14 inches alone, and its length totaling as much as 22 inches counting its legs. Only 6 Chan's megastick specimens were ever found before a new stick insect species, Phryganistria chinensis zhao, nabbed the title for the world's longest insect in 2016, 2 years after its discovery. Chao Li, an entomologist with the Insect Museum of West China in Chengdu, searched for the species for years based on the accounts of locals. He finally found one in a mountainous region of Guanche province in southern China, measuring an astounding 24.6 inches long. Zhao took the specimen back to the museum with him, where it laid eggs. One of the captively bred offspring grew even larger than its parent, reaching 25.2 inches long, roughly the length of a young man's arm. There are currently over a dozen live specimens on display at the Insect Museum of West China. They are so large, their cages are over a meter tall, and each cage only holds 3 specimens. Giant otter. The giant otter is found throughout north-central South America, primarily in and along the Amazon River, as well as the Orinoco and La Plata river systems. It's the longest member of the weasel family, reaching up to 6 feet long, more than double the length of the world's smallest otter, and weighs as much as 70 pounds, with some giant otters likely being even heavier. Generally speaking, giant otters feed on fish, including piranhas, and they are also known to occasionally prey on other, more formidable animals, including caimans and anacondas. The species has few predators, but sometimes falls victim to jaguars. Its competitiveness, owing to its size and speed, has earned it the nickname of river wolf. Equipped with powerful tails, webbed feet, and water-repellent fur, giant otters are extremely efficient swimmers. They are also extremely social creatures, living in groups of up to 20 and sometimes also hunting in groups. This species is monogamous, and mothers give birth to anywhere between 1 and 6 offspring per litter. Giant otters are endangered per the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN Red List, due largely to extensive hunting, habitat contamination, and habitat loss, as well as the overfishing of their prey. Conflicts with fishermen are also a factor. As a result, the species is fragmented into small subpopulations and will likely need human intervention to recover. 30-foot wild snake. Wildfires that raged across parts of Indonesia in 2019 forced wildlife to desperately scramble for safety, with many typically elusive species becoming more visible than usual. Unfortunately, many animals died, and locals combating the fires found their charred remains. Among the creatures who tragically perished in the blaze were large wild snakes, including a massive 30-foot python that sadly was burned by the fire with its mouth wide open. But this was certainly not the largest snake ever witnessed in the country, not by a long shot. In 2004, Indonesian villagers caught a 49-foot-long, 983-pound reticulated python that reportedly ate 3 or 4 dogs per month, which isn't surprising, considering the species is known to eat animals as large as sheep and to occasionally even attack and consume humans. The creature vastly superseded the previous Guinness record holder for the largest snake ever captured, which measured 32 feet long, and more than doubled the previous title holder for the heaviest snake ever captured, a 402-pound Burmese python. Giant isopod. These giant roly-poly looking things are pretty terrifying close up. The term giant isopod encompasses around 20 supergiant isopod species from the Bathynomus genus. It is also used to reference the Bathynomus giganteus species in particular, which is considered the world's largest isopod. B. giganteus typically grows between 7.5 and 14.2 inches long, with the largest recorded specimen measuring 20 inches long. Who knows how big the ones we haven't seen can get? This and other giant isopods resemble the woodlouse or the pillbug, their much smaller terrestrial relative. Scientists aren't really sure how they are able to get so big, but it may be to help them withstand the deep pressure of the ocean. Their enormous size is characteristic of a condition called deep-sea gigantism, which is what it sounds like, a tendency for deep-sea creatures to grow much larger than their shallow water or terrestrial relatives. The deeper a giant isopod species dwells, the larger it tends to be. These deep-sea scavengers, which are mainly found at depths between 560 and 7,020 feet, are all over the world. These guys can go a very long time without eating, but when they do, they pretty much binge and can dissolve a sunken whale corpse in a matter of hours. Bootlace worm. Also called ribbon worms or proboscis worms, the bootlace worm holds the distinction of being the longest animal on Earth, but not many people know about it. Measuring just 0.2 to 0.4 inches wide, it can grow up to 180 feet long, though specimens typically measure between 15 and 50 feet long. When provoked, the bootlace worm releases a thick, poisonous mucus. In a 2018 study published in the journal Scientific Reports, Professor Ulf Göransson of Uppsala University in Sweden and his colleagues discovered that a peptide toxin in the creature's mucus is capable of paralyzing and killing cockroaches and crustaceans. While peptide toxins are found in some warm water creatures like cone snails, the bootlace worm dwells in cooler waters And the peptide toxin its mucus contains, nemertide A1, is the most poisonous substance ever discovered throughout Sweden's animal kingdom. Scientists believe that the effects of nemertide A1 are not as harmful in mammals as they are for invertebrates, and they are therefore looking into its potential uses as an insecticide. Giant huntsman spider. The giant huntsman spider was discovered in a cave in Laos in 2001 by Dr. Peter Jager of Johannes Gutenberg University's Institute for Zoology. It hails from the Sparacidae family of large, fast spiders who actively hunt prey and is considered the world's largest spider by leg span, measuring up to 1 foot in diameter, roughly the size of a dinner plate. Only a few people have had the privilege of seeing a giant huntsman spider, which has been misidentified as a tarantula, despite its crab-like splayed legs, which are uncharacteristic of tarantulas. It lives in caves in Southeast Asia, and scientists are unsure why it grows so big. One theory, put forth by Dr. Jager, suggests that the spider's huge size results from its slow growth, which is caused by the scarcity of prey in its environment. Unfortunately, the discovery of the giant huntsman spider made it a high-demand subject of the exotic pet trade. As a result, its numbers are dwindling, according to Jager, who hopes that its inability to survive much longer than a year outside its natural habitat drives down the demand for the creature. Number 2. Goliath frog. As its name implies, the Goliath frog is huge. In fact, it's the world's largest frog, reaching up to 13 inches long and weighing as much as 7.2 pounds, around the same size as a newborn baby. It's found throughout Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea, a relatively small range, and prefers to live in rainforests in and near fast-flowing rivers and waterfalls. These nocturnal creatures have been around for roughly 250 million years. They emerged into existence around 20 million years before the dinosaurs, and are still here, long after the dinosaurs went extinct. Goliath frogs hunt mainly for insects, crustaceans, fish, and other amphibians, although a bat was once found in one's stomach. The species, like many others on today's list, is declining, and for numerous reasons. Poachers capitalize on the demand for the Goliath frog's meat, and for export, including to the US, which hosts an annual frog jumping competition. Habitat loss is also a factor, thanks to logging, farming, and human settlements. The Goliath frog is now legally protected, but considering its continuously dwindling numbers, the legislative measures may prove to be too little, too late. Chinese paddlefish. Native to China's Yangtze and Yellow River basins, the Chinese paddlefish, also called the Chinese swordfish, was one of the world's largest fish species. It spent over 200 million years on Earth, emerging into existence before the dinosaurs and surviving the mass extinction that killed them, ultimately prevailing into modern times. The species, which reached up to 23 feet long and weighed as much as 1,100 pounds, faced and prevailed through numerous tests of survival over many millennia, but it ultimately succumbed to human activity. Its decline took place mostly throughout the last century. By the 1970s, around 25 tons of the fish were harvested annually, according to National Geographic, and its existence was ultimately tipped over the edge by dam construction, which prevented the Chinese paddlefish from reaching its spawning grounds. Not surprisingly, humans underestimate the gravity of the creature's dire situation. The last known sighting of a Chinese paddlefish occurred in 2003, but by then the damage was long done. In fact, scientists believe the species became functionally extinct, in other words, too short in numbers to meaningfully reproduce, by 1993. It's estimated that the fish officially went extinct sometime between 2005 and 2010. Based on mathematical models and the fruitless search for a living Chinese paddlefish, researchers concluded that the species could still exist, but that it's unlikely. Having accepted the creature's likely fate, scientists are now focused on learning from the mistakes that doomed the Chinese paddlefish and preserving other similar at-risk species. Thanks for watching! How many of these animals have you heard of already? Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up to let me know you want to see more like this. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!